Cool. I just started recording. We're back at the hacking
Oh,
hour, and we just discussed hardest problem, how to face problems. And one of the reasons we talked about that is that these videos can get very very technical. But I think we agree, Alexander. It's fair to say that there's no way to cheat this process. Like to get these APIs right, to get this code right, you just have to go through these long, arduous, detailed discussions. So
I think so, yeah. Or at least I've never managed to do without.
yeah,
So who knows? It could
that's a
be
good
that
point.
some people are able to, get straight to the very elegant API just works. But yeah, I really think that, like everything else, it's a matter of experiment. You
And
don't know until you try.
what I particularly like about this, I mean, these specific videos with you, is that we have some really enlightened conversations, right? I mean, there's like both of us have some experience. I mean, you've definitely done like beautiful work, right? And I think it's also in that intersection when you scrutinize things. It's like when you put it out in the open, you turn it around, you rotate it a bit, and you try to push one side and pull the other and see what happens. That's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, right?
100%. And uh, I'd love to claim that I started that way, being very pragmatic, but I guess like a lot of other people, I started, and perhaps you did too, I'm not sure, with, a very theoretical concept. Uh, uh,
For
and
sure.
that is great, like conceptually very elegant, but so incredibly hard to use in practice.
But would you say
And
you
yeah,
need theory in order to think in a structured manner, or can you do without? Would you be fine if you just skipped the theory part altogether?
mm. I think there's a certain power in abstraction. Um, so a little like theoretical science versus very experimental science, genuinely think that you need a bit of both. Um, that they're very complementary, if that makes any sense. So I think that, for instance, there are a few programming languages, if we think about, say, Python, for instance, that are very experimental. Python wasn't really thought through. It was sort of put together and it works and it's quite good because it really puts the user first. There are languages that are far more theoretical. Lisp, for instance, is incredibly elegant. Like all the concepts are kind of neatly built together. So as a result, the parser is incredibly simple. It has far fewer edge cases because it's mathematically elegant. And it's also horrible to use. So yeah, I think that you need a bit of both. Uh, a robust theoretical base, but you don't want to just say, well, I'm done with that, and therefore it's the best. You really want to put that in the end of the users and then realize what works and what doesn't.
I fully agree with that, and it's interesting. I think first of all, it's interesting to see how different people do this differently. But I do have a
Mhm.
strong sense that it's also an iterative process, right? I think it's difficult to start with zero theory and only do practice. But vice versa, I think it's very difficult to start with zero practice and do only theory, right? There has to be kind of an
Yeah.
interplay. It's a bit like the scientific method, like ideas are great, but they only work if you can demonstrate that
Mhm.
empirically this actually holds to scrutiny.
I think, or I hope, that we are essentially applying the scientific method when we build the API we're currently building together. Um,
I like that's a great tagline, like building
I
APIs
I
with
don't
the
know if it's
scientific
true,
method.
but
Well, I mean, to some extent it is. Like, unfortunately, we're fallible, right? And I wish my memory was way better than it actually is. So I guess there's some suboptimality to it. But especially the conversation we just had now. So what I mean specifically are the talks we had on the two pull requests. We're probably gonna discuss
Mhm.
and merge now on the MP4 conversion, which by the way is absolutely amazing. Like I wrote in the comment, I cannot wait to use this. This has been a tool I've been waiting for 5 years. Um, but the conversations here, I think, are really, really good, right? Because it is, in some sense, the scientific method. You try something, oh, that could work a bit different. What if we do this? And then at some point, we converge.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, the Well, I guess it's not that different from saying, because I'm thinking that there's also a layer of personal preference as well in terms of, how things interface or how much abstractions you're willing to learn and so on.
Hmm.
But arguably, whilst we try to hide it as much as we can, there is some of that in science as well. The idea that a particular theory is more elegant than another one. You can, objectively assess them by comparing mathematical results. But if you look at the elegance of a particular formulation, it's kind of hard to quantify, I think. There's just, oh yeah, I prefer that one. I find it easier to understand, or I don't know, has fewer symbols. So there's some of that as well in an API.
That's an interesting thought. I recall reading a book by David Deutsch called The Beginning of Infinity, where he actually states that beauty is an inherent property of the universe. There is another measure for beauty and
Hmm.
simplicity in some sense. Because I think you're right. I mean, it's difficult. The experimental data does not show you how beautiful the theory is or like that predicts it, right? It doesn't care. The theory is a human construct, right?
Hmm.
But so maybe there's a separate thing to, yeah. I love how we get philosophical here as well. Like it's we're really spanning
We
wide.
are. Uh,
Should we briefly
it's,
just get in, hit the road? Because I guess you mentioned that we could look at the two pull requests here on the CLI API and the MP4.
mhm.
I mean, I think both of us added comments to both of the pull requests. To the MP4 part, is there anything, any open loose ends you would like to discuss? Because everything seems to check out, right? So all the checks pass, which is, by the way, a pretty tremendous effort because you made this work with the MP4 H265 264 encoding on all platforms. It's absolutely brilliant on all different versions of Python, even better. So
Mhm.
technically speaking, the code should be in a good state, right?
I think so. Um, the I think that it's pretty much ready to merge. Of course, we might, change some aspects further down the line, but I think that it's ready to be merged and, move forward with that,
Hmm.
uh, with what we have so far. The question is, would you like me to um, rebase it to reduce the number of commits, or are you happy with the 10 or so commits? I've already done a rebase to remove the 70 nonsense commits that I used just to test the CI/CD pipeline. I'm happy to do another pass if you think that's useful, and otherwise, I guess that we can merge.
I'm happy as it stands, right? Like I said, I haven't gone through all the, for instance, H264 code, and I'm not like a Rust expert, so that part is difficult for me to give you thorough feedback on. But I think,
Yeah.
as you can show by the tests, right, everything works.
Yeah.
There might be something we can get back to, but I think this state is infinitely better than what was there before, which was zero, right?
Yeah.
Um, regarding the rebasing, I mean, what I normally have done for other libraries, but I'm so happy to reevaluate this. But what I've normally done
Mhm.
is to squash this thing and merge, and the reason is then we can tie one pull request or one issue to one commit. It kind of closes one commit. It's a bit of a problematic in the beginning, right? Because some of these pull requests can be huge, right? With this,
Mhm.
there's so many changes. Um, so honestly, I think you should, as the author of this, I'm happy to leave it to you, Alexandra. Do you prefer to have one commit that relates to one PR, or should we just what's it called, rebase and merge as it is?
I'm tempted to just merge as it is.
Yeah,
That way, we keep a progression of sorts of the steps we went through to
let's
build
do
this
that.
particular feature.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Then
Would you
you
like
have a
to do the
bit richer
honors?
that, yeah, and then your previous comment also makes sense. So this having this progression makes sense if you have some, you know, serious steps. But if you have 70 commits per pull request, and we're gonna have a couple of hundred pull requests, this quickly gets out of
That is true.
out of order. Do you want to have the honor? Like you're the
All
owner
right, I'm
of
gonna
the.
click merge, confirm merge, merging,
I wonder how it looks on
and
my side. Ooh, it now says
delete
merged.
branch.
Woohoo! This is
Neat.
fantastic.
All right. Um, so what we can do is um, either merge your end as well or rebase it first and merge it, up to you. And once that's done, we can create a new release. We're still in the 0 point something series, so I think that's absolutely okay if we break everything at the next release.
I was
Just
just about
have,
to say that. I think that's a very good
something that's
idea.
easy to use.
So now there are a couple of conflicts in the color map. So maybe I should pull that up and fix that locally. What do you think?
Yes. Sorry about that, because I'm probably indirectly responsible for some of the conflicts because I possibly changed a couple of things.
I mean,
Uh,
it's impossible to not have conflicts with
yeah,
these kind of things. This is perfectly fine. That's why conflicts
yeah.
exists. Um,
So anything in inline you can probably safely ignore or override. Um, and actually anything in color maps as well, because all the conflicts are in the CLI, not because I was wondering whether I changed something in the color map implementation to somehow make it work with videos or something. I think there's just some changes that I made for some reason that made no sense in the CLI part, which you were refactoring anyway. So
hmm.
feel free to just override everything with your local version.
You sure?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
don't think that those changes matter.
do you so notice that the structure now is that okay? I'm not sure inline actually has changed. So first of all, the API is or the CLI is not complete. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I actually do not pass. You can see that I'm only using the input, output, color maps, init, and render. So inline is not
Mhm.
a part of it yet.
Got it. So one thing that could cause an issue, and the reason why I modified inline, is that um, inline does implements reflection at runtime. So it scans the source to extract all the possible filters, right? And
Ah,
in doing so, it actually expects us. So inline can crash when you import the library if it finds a type that it does not understand, because you still have to do a bit of type wrangling
oh God,
to make it
Alexandre.
work.
Okay,
Anyway, so
yeah.
that's why I modified inline. There was an issue where I added a float parameter. Actually, I think that it comes from the frequency underscore hertz change.
Hmm, yeah, I see. Yes,
Um,
there'll be a
so
time
you
issue
may
there.
have to keep that change at the very
But
least.
but I actually don't think I made any changes to inline because I haven't made it fit
Mm,
to the current. So I think I'm just gonna accept everything coming in.
got it.
So that should take care of that sort because and the reason why I can say that is because currently the way that I've structured these commands is that we have these now called commands, but we
Mhm.
also have these groups. I call them a command group. And so every time you want to introduce an inline or a render or whatever you want, the structure right now you both need to provide a parser, right? Because then there's a block that needs to be parsed. How many arguments do you have, and so on and so forth. But it's also a way to execute this. I mean, it's very straightforward, and I think it fits very well, very closely with your format because here you're adding the subparser. Instead, you just write the parser directly here.
Got
Um,
it. Easy.
so if you want, I can do that quickly, and then we can add it in the commit. Um,
Um, Up to you, whichever is easier for you.
this will take us 2 seconds. So we just say, and then the only different things is it's not called help. If you're in a argument parser, not a subgroup, it's called description, which is obvious, I guess, to someone. Um, the challenge is then that we need, secondly, to define. Oh, we also need the Data classes. Ha. So we also need the actually I think we can just use the existing. Yeah, let's just reuse the existing. Sorry. No. What I wanted to ask you, it's very difficult to code and ask questions at the same time. We need a runner, so something that can actually take and execute these things. And I don't know how that works in inline. Is that where you parse the pipeline here? Because you use a string.
Yes, basically, but inline is a special case in that it is going to be replaced by the main parser. Inline was really there as an implementation of the idea of having a series of filters, an input and an output. So
So
we can reuse parts of it, but we'll need to completely refactor it anyway.
are you saying
If
we
you,
should remove it then? Because if that's the case, then this can be replaced totally by the input-output filter thing.
yes, absolutely. What I think we should do is just remove it.
Okay.
But I would invite you to go back to it and steal some of the code chunks if you need to implement some sort of dynamic reflection to automatically import all the filter types, all the filter names,
Mm.
so that you don't have to essentially replicate the entire API inside the CLI.
So that's a really important part because that's like something I left out at the moment, and I just want to briefly mention that there's this beautiful to-do here because we have filters and I haven't implemented that yet. So
Okay.
maybe one option
So
would be that we how about we sit down and maybe do that together? Do you think that would be an option? Like now? I mean, how long would
yeah,
that take essentially?
absolutely. Um, I don't know yet because it is a little fiddly, uh, but we can get started and see how far we go.
Hmm. Another option is to wait for this and do what you suggested earlier, which is to delete this or leave it out, and then later reuse it. Because I do like the reflection idea, right? That we can
Yeah.
scan for filters without having to manually add them.
Do you have a rough sense of when your guest is arriving?
Well, I mean, this is very loose, right? And
Okay.
but it would.
Because
Well, so
I
my
was
thinking
thinking,
is the following: if you start doing it now, that will take
mhm,
some time and probably more than we expect. And I also
yeah,
like having a release out, so we can show the world that something finished.
sounds very good.
Yeah, you okay with that?
So absolutely. Another thing we could feasibly do is take 10 minutes now or just after pushing the release for me to sort of quickly walk you through the code in question, not the details, but just the sort of overall structure. And that way, whether I do it or you do it, we have like the starting point of a discussion and sort of a shared understanding of what that was doing.
Hmm.
And that way we can sort of take it asynchronously and offline. And you or me can spend more time sort of figuring out how to import that. If you reckon that'd be useful, otherwise, if you'd rather read it on your in your own time, that's absolutely fine as well.
I mean, it's always useful to get your input. I mean, you designed this thing, and I can see it's not. I think a little fiddly is a good way to put it. um,
Um, yeah, and I'm absolutely like conscious of that. So that's why I'm not saying let me walk you through every individual line of this 1,000 line uh, script, but rather sort of a very quick, high level description of what the different chunks do, so that you know what to ignore and what to look at if you do need to steal some of those lines.
can we do that just real quick? I mean, I think I understand the idea here. You're basically creating two data classes, which is the parameter for filters and the actual filters. So I guess the whole exercise here will be to populate those filters and find out what the parameters actually are, so that you can use that in the command line. Is that fair to say?
That's pretty much the gist of it. So let me see if I can bring up, because there's one thing that I think is sort of useful. I think that as of last week, I can actually share my screen with that crashing Discord. I'm going to
That's
try to do that.
amazing. Then I'll leave the recording screen to you. Then I of course have to click watch stream. There we go. Can you zoom in just a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, how's that?
Can you do
Or
one
one more
more?
level,
Then we're good.
like that.
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
Yes. Okay, so boilerplate doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. The first important function is this, which is this sort of inspection or reflection thing, as I was mentioning, where you're essentially telling Python at runtime, so
Uh-oh.
present the functions in that class.
I'm so sorry, Alexandre. I lost you for like 10 seconds. I think
Oh,
my internet skipped the beat. Could you repeat? Sorry.
or is it still? Yeah.
I think I'm back now. I don't know if yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, no worries. Okay.
Yeah, but
Do let me know
you're
if you
inspecting there.
if
So
there's anything.
essentially you go through all the different types of streams, and then you're reading
Yes,
through the members of those, which means you get all the
that's correct.
possible functions, all the possible methods on
Yeah.
the
So what's
streams, right?
important? Essentially generate objects that represent the methods of another class.
So again, the internet cut out. I've never seen this
Oh,
before,
damn.
but
I think that it hates the term member or class. I don't know.
it must be it. It realizes how
Can't blame
important
it.
the technology we're building is, so it has to disrupt us. No, but I think what I heard you say is that you get then the signature, which is then the representation of. Um,
Oh. So the signature gives you the name of the function,
yeah.
the name of the parameters of the function, and better yet, it also gives you, uh, if it has them, annotations for those parameters. So you can actually retrieve the typing that you've done in another file, which is pretty neat.
Fantastic.
So,
Yeah.
so this is really all there is to it. Once you've retrieved the typing, so here you need to do a little bit of extra magic because Python sucks. And when you annotate something, you can either use quotes, which you may have done, when you want to avoid some sort of import issues. I don't know if you've ever had to do that.
Yes.
Uh, or you can use the actual class. Unfortunately, Python, well, they fixed it in Python 3.13, I think, or 14, well, future version. But for the time being, your annotation can be one or the other. So you have to
Of
support
course.
both by
Yeah.
checking whether it's equal to int, the class,
Or
or
int the
int,
string.
the
Yeah,
string.
that's fair.
You need to do the same thing for booleans, um,
And so on and so
or
forth.
Faery time objects, and so on and so forth. So this is just a little bit of extra boilerplate to say, well, if you see a parameter that has the type Faery.time, here's how you pass it from the command line. What we would want to do in that we are using argparse with this very clever recursive parser that you designed. For each of those entries we would want to add, we would want to call set attribute on argparse to create an argparse attribute. And that way we can just do the typing in argparse and let argparse do the parsing.
That is very nice. Yes, I
And
see.
we can, for the few types that are not supported out of the box by argparse, for instance, Faery.time, we can always specify custom parsing functions.
But my understanding is that that's actually quite easy right now because you're constructing these data classes. So we could just traverse these data classes, and every time we find a
Oh, so
filter, we go through the parameters, right?
yes, you could use the existing filter and filter parameter classes as some sort of intermediate representation that describes the middle ground. And then you convert that to argparse.
Right?
Uh, yes, that's absolutely feasible. But I feel like that's going to add, so you would re-import all this boilerplate and then have another chunk of boilerplate that says, well, if the type is int, then you can just give the type int to argparse. If it's, say, Faery.time, then you need a custom parser. So you may end up with another big if, else if, or elif loop. So might be better to just directly write an argparse and avoid this sort of intermediate representation, if you'll allow me the use of that very important concept
It is a very useful term everywhere.
that it is.
Well, I mean that is
Um,
true. Another option would be to reconfigure, so to speak, the filter parameter to be something that argparse understands.
yeah.
Um, because I mean,
Um,
I like this code, right? I think it's nice. Okay, but
but everything else is just the custom parser, so it doesn't matter. So you can safely ignore anything else, essentially.
okay.
Uh, well, the one thing I would recommend is this print filters function, which is both useful as a means to debug, make sure that the code behaves as intended, and also as a useful help um, function for the user. So the idea is that when they type in Faery help or perhaps Faery pipeline help, instead of getting the generic help that shows the overall um, structure of the command line, they would see a list of all the filters that are available and not necessarily a ton of details, but just the name and types of the parameters.
That's actually
That
really
way,
helpful. I mean, so this will even be good in the help text, right? So whenever you wanna
I
understand
feel
the
that
filter.
absolutely. I'm just, yeah, 100%. I just think that we should try and separate that from the more generic help about the command line. Otherwise, we risk having one of those horrendous help messages that,
That is
you know,
actually also, I see
and hundreds of lines and are always
that.
difficult to absorb. At least as a user, I'd rather have a simple little chunk of help, and then if you want, that makes it clear that there's more help on some of the
I,
topics,
I like that a lot.
and tells you if you want, more help on this or that, you can
Even though I
fix it
was
that
about
way.
to suggest we should write man pages, but I guess that doesn't that's not gonna fly well with you. So
But
that's a
I'm
joke.
all
That's
for
a joke.
man
That's a
pages.
joke. Well, the man pages is that, right? I mean, you get, but this is also exhaustive to some extent. So you do have to be verbose, but it is terrible, right?
Really be nice to have a man page about Fairy. That'd be kind of funny. Anyway, that's it. That's all I wanted to point out. And really, uh, we don't even need to reuse that chunk of code per se. I just wanted to point those little inspect functions which are built in and let you get access to filters and parameters and annotations and so on. So yeah,
I see. But that's really cool. Um, oh, Alexandra, are you there?
yeah. Oh, did I drop?
No,
I can say hey you.
I think the video is very slow. I have no idea what's happening with my internet at the moment. My ping is great, But your video is like really slow. It's like you're moving in slow motion.
It could also be my internet. Perhaps I have a video speed test or something.
You look like you're. I don't. Can you see it on my stream? It looks like you're slowing down to like a hundredth.
Cannot actually see your stream.
Hmm.
I can only see like the blue squares of Discord that uh, Google is saying that my internet connection is very fast.
Well, then I think I trust that more than me. Let me just quickly jump off and on, and we'll see what happens. I'll be right back. Perfect.
Oh,
Yeah,
is it better?
I don't know what's happening. I'm
Oh,
clearly
I
new
can
to
now
this stream
see.
thing.
Okay, I something now working better. I can actually see your the the stream and everything.
Amazing. But that was a very nice walkthrough of inline. I mean, I'm tempted to do this quickly, but I'm also tempted to just move on and yeah, kind of
I
get the
think that
release out.
makes Yeah, I think that makes sense to move on
So what about the
because we
following?
can get the release.
Oh, sorry. What if I then simply just remove the file from the cache? Um, and then, Alexandra, are you there?
I
Oh God.
lost you again,
Yeah.
or I disappeared. I'm not sure.
So I don't have a descript or a good argument for why this happens, but once in a while my network just pings out. There's nothing in my log, it seems like. But
That is
my
quite
suggestion
strange.
is, if you're okay with it, to just remove this from the staging in Git and then leave it out for now, and then merge the rests, because then I can come back to the inline and add the command manually here. So then add the filter in a separate commit.
Uh,
Yeah,
um,
again the timeout,
Faery
sorry.
init. Yeah, yeah. It gives it. Perhaps we may have to drop the stream for today. I don't know. Maybe it's just on my end, which if is the case, it's not all that bad.
No, I'm pinging in the background. I can see that once in a while it just drops a few packets, so there must be something wrong.
I
But
see.
um, yeah. But one suggestion would be that we. Oh God, Alexander.
Yep,
Yeah,
I can say. Funny enough, I usually hear you fairly. The audio is somewhat stable.
that's interesting. Okay. Well, one suggestion would be that I remove inline from the staging area in Git, and then we proceed with the existing definitions here, and then we can push and release.
Sounds good.
There's a big change here in the color maps, and mainly because I had to, or not I had to, but I added this color maps command thing, which then
Hmm.
implements this run method, which is just a indented thing. Did you do any change in the API here in color maps?
So you dropped for a minute there.
Amazing. I just asked whether you did any changes in the color maps, because I basically just refactored the code to be a part of this command. So I didn't change anything. But have you added anything for the color maps command in your commit in the PR we just merged?
I'm pretty sure that I have not, but I'm going to double check really quickly. You can move ahead assuming that I have not, and in the background I'll double check.
Well, it's easy to do, right? We can just go into the CLI, no, sorry, the closed pull request, the MP4, and then
Use blame, my favorite feature.
colormaps.py.
Ah,
There were changes, but what?
mm,
Yeah, so some padding. So I think what I'll do is just accept maybe what I'll do actually is just look at this file and then simply just copy things in, because I'm sure it's going to be correct.
Yeah, that works too. What did I? What were the changes?
So something about x equals padding left, y equals offset.
Oh, I know what I changed. It's in the image API. So Rust, besides doing video, also has a few functions to do image encoding.
Hmm.
And there's a somewhat low-level function, so it's kind of hidden away from the user to do image operations. It's hidden from the user because whilst it won't crash, it will give you somewhat unhelpful messages if you don't give it the right arguments. Uh,
I
so the
see.
idea is that most users would use those features through the Python API, which is a bit nicer, a bit clearer as to the intent. And at some point, I decided that said the offset in X and Y were really redundant, and that just calling those parameters X and Y made more sense. So you do need to change it on your end. Otherwise, well, actually, you should get a type error if you don't make the changes. It should tell you that the function has a different signature.
Well, this actually seems to work.
With X underscore offset or with just X.
Well, now I copied in your code, so I should literally just
Oh,
replace
got it.
everything in here. So this should
Okay.
be completely new.
Yeah.
I wonder, there's a bit of a type error here for a variable that seems to exist, which I'm puzzled about. And here the output seems to be strange.
Can you scroll back to the first one?
The first one?
Fair of the two.
This error. Right, so this gets the, haha, yes, of course. That's because, okay, yes, so see, this takes a namespace. And
All right. So it's probably because I made the function slightly generic, where you can actually. Did I do that? Did I make it? So you could absolutely just save the default value of what used to be a variable into just a constant. Because
right.
from the command line, the user is not gonna like select a subset of color maps or something like that.
You sure?
Yeah, I don't think that is, at least for now, an important use case.
I think this
And
makes a
there's
whole lot more
also,
sense.
yeah, the API also has uh, another function to render a color map. So I think that rather than saying, oh, I'd like to have a list of all the color maps, of all the built-in color maps, except for those 5 color maps that I don't like for some.
Well, Jesus Christ. This is really annoying, but I'm still alive. For some reason my ping is just completely out, and I don't really have a good explanation. I rebooted my wireless interface. the network, the place I'm at is really struggling.
Oh, you're back.
Hello. I don't have
Hey,
another explanation than the place I'm at is really struggling with their connectivity. Sorry about that.
no, that's absolutely all right.
But so just to come back to it, I mean, regarding the names and color maps, couldn't we just retain this inspection thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Good,
Um, yeah.
because then I think um, notice is that this with statement was inside the loop for each color map key. Shouldn't it be outside?
Um,
Maybe if you allow me to, that's an old artifact of my code. I'm sorry, that's my implementation. This should be exactly where it is. So this now is at the,
okay,
so
that's
this
good.
should work. Let me just, I can test this locally. Just 1 second. Actually, I can do this here. Maybe I just need to enter my next environment. That would, by the way, be one killer way to get all the deployment for instance, MP4 in there. But that's, I think,
Mm,
another discussion. Um, now it will
that's
say,
true.
can't import MP4. Ah, see now there's a new content in there.
All right. Uh, and you may have to install an ASM. It may be installed by default on your system.
And what?
So it is actually optional, but I'm pretty sure that it's actually quite critical for good performance. X264 has some inline assembly code. So some of the parts they just wrote directly in assembly for performance.
Hmm,
And
of
because
course.
the C language, which is what the rest of their API is written in, doesn't know how to deal with assembly, there's an extra component called NASM, which takes care of, yes, that's exactly what's missing. So
Exactly.
uh, yeah, I completely forgot to document that part, but yeah, every developer will need to have the same tools as the CLI to actually build the package locally.
We should really have that. I mean, luckily for me, that's a trivial thing because this exists in Nix. So I simply just
That's
go.
good.
It will pull it down again. But that's
That actually
actually
looks pretty cool.
that's something I'd love to talk about because we should really have like documentations for these kind of things.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, what's up now?
I have an ISM. What version is it? Let's check. 2.16.
Yeah, that's the latest version. But the message is unhelpful in that if it cannot find it or if the version's wrong, it will print the same message.
But I can't even find what the maybe there's. Can I do it like with?
Um,
Okay, so this is where we start. Go, 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 go. Installing collective. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Running maturin. Failed to run custom build command. Process didn't exit successfully. Build script build. So, I mean, this is really not helpful, right? It says found assembler. Great. Minimum version is. Ah, maybe there's still an error here. No. Maturin failed. Is there a way we can get like more verbose output from maturin?
Um,
I could try this. Oops.
so just for my own sort of understanding, so when you add a package to Nix, does it make it available in your local environment? So if you were to type which NASM in the terminal, start sort of installing, it would point at the right thing. Oh, great.
Exactly.
So can you double check the version? Okay, so
Do you mind if it? I think this was a command I tried to run. Can I try the same?
not sure.
Uh, because this is
Oh yeah,
in.
because it creates. Oh, I see what's happening. So when Maturin builds a package, it precisely to make sure that you have all the right dependencies, it creates its own little virtual environment. And it actually builds the package in the virtual environment. And I would wager that that virtual environment does not have an ASM
Let me
because it's
just.
only installed. I guess that essentially the Maturin virtual environment does not inherit. Well, but if it were true, it wouldn't have Rust either. Oh, except they can install it. Okay, I think that I know what's going on. Here's my theory.
Hit it.
When you invoke pip install build or something,
Hmm.
it actually first creates a new virtual environment, and then it pulls in all the resources just using the standard rules of Python to declare the build engine. So the presence of pyproject.toml tells pip build or Python build that you need maturin. So that's when the whole Rust stuff is. Oh, except that that still wouldn't be true of Rust. Okay, I don't
But
know if my
is
theory doesn't
is
work.
it is it a Rust cargo thing? Like, can we add an ASM in Rust then?
We cannot. So that part is in build.rs. So essentially, when you build any Rust package, if there is a file called build.rs, Rust will first blindly run whatever's in that file before it tries to build anything else.
Hmm.
And someone made a very useful crate that lets you build C code in that file, because that's a very common use case where you have some sort of C dependency as part of your Rust
I
library.
see. Yeah. Okay.
And that library is, sorry, that file invokes /configure, which is the first step to building H64. And /configure checks for the presence of NASM. So if you open MP4, go to X264, and then go to configure, the file right there. So this is the bash script that runs. And somewhere in that file, there's exactly the error that you got, which I've had several times whilst trying to get to build on the backend. But usually just making sure that an ASM is installed is enough. Yeah, it's not exactly a simple file.
Jesus.
I didn't write any of this, right? This is just H264 as a library. So
Yeah.
someone
Yeah. No.
already took care of writing all of that complexity for us.
But still impressive. I'm just wondering how to get around this because NASM is clearly installed. What I
Hmm.
can maybe try is I can try to
Well,
kill the
can
virtual.
you do within your virtual oh, sorry.
No, all good.
Uh, so within your virtual environment, can you try pip install maturin?
Yes. Now I just try to kill it and
Okay.
reset
Oh,
it
to
or
see if
something.
there's like a weird cache
It
state.
could be a weird cache thing that pip may not be aware, but that would also be strange. Yeah, the Wi-Fi here is definitely suffering. 1 megabyte per second. That's not a lot. Wasn't there an error here? Oh yeah, this is then the okay. But then we're back to the same problem. The package doesn't build.
Okay. Um,
Um,
can you try pip install?
yes. Let me just quickly do one thing, which is to
Mhm.
patch. So the magic of Nix is that all um, oh, patch. Sorry. That all the libraries are then linked dynamically, right? Which or like linked symbolically, which means you can just have all your packages in Nix packages somewhere, right? But then, of course, all the pip packages need to know that. So you have to update all the references in the
Oh,
pip packages.
right.
But let's install maturin like this, right?
Mhm.
Great.
And then run maturin space develop.
Two years later. Maybe this is a great period for me to take a minute break, Alexandra. I will be right back. And I am back. you, you look
It is still
thoughtful.
complaining. Yes, I'm seeing that it is still
Thread main
unhappy.
panicked.
Okay, so same issue.
Let me
So
go up.
somehow
Hmm.
I think that maturin is creating some sort of environment in which it does the build, which is why, despite you already having NumPy installed in your virtual environment, I believe, I saw it being downloaded before. First thing that maturin did is redownload NumPy. You should scroll back up to right after invoking maturin develop. Uh, it
That's
starts
true.
by
Yeah, collecting.
selecting NumPy, right? Uh, and that tells me that somehow it's working in an environment where NumPy isn't ready yet. So it's probably a new pip environment.
Can we?
And what I don't fully understand is why maturin can find Rust without a problem. Even the Rust should only be in your next virtual environment, but for some reason, an ASM disappears when maturin starts, which is the problem here.
That is very strange. I mean, one possible explanation is that I have it outside of the virtual environment, but I don't think that's the case. No, I do not.
So I just typed Nix maturin in Google, and there's a thread with people discussing the interaction between those two tools.
Oh God. I mean, another option is
Uh,
that I just quickly dump this through Docker, and then we avoid Nix hassles.
yeah, but I'd love for it to. I don't want to break your workflow.
But I could also fix it later. Is what I'm saying. I just wonder how cumbersome the fix would be. Oh, specify the pip install. Nay, no.
So are Nix virtual environments similar to pip virtual environments? Is it the same sort of construct, or are they fundamentally different?
I'm not entirely sure how pip virtual environments goes, but I mean, Nix virtual environments for me is literally just setting a number of environment variables. Right, this tells you where to get your binaries from and your libraries from.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually very similar for pip virtual environments, which is what maturin uses under the hood,
Mm.
where it just creates a local directory and then it's
But then that's strange, right? Because NASM is in that. I mean, if I create a virtual environment with Python, right, or with pip, I should
Mhm.
get the same. Yeah, I should get access to the same binaries, right? It wouldn't override all my paths, would it?
Uh, so I think that maturin by default creates an isolated new virtual environment where basically part of the issue with virtual environments is that you can, as a developer, run pip install in your current local virtual environment. And if your build depends on that, you haven't written anywhere in your pipe project or anything that that particular library was required, but it will work nonetheless because you manually installed it locally.
Yeah.
So to try and prevent that, maturin essentially creates a fresh virtual environment whenever it creates a new build, with the idea that that should work out of the box. So one could argue that I should find a way to tell maturin to first download an ASM. That way, in principle, you could always run pip install from any environment and maturin or pip or something would take care of downloading all those dependencies. But it is so incredibly system specific that this may add a whole chunk of boilerplate right in the build process.
I like your point about Rust existing, right? So you know, the Rust compiler in Cargo is clearly there. Why is it then? Why is it then that it cannot find this other dependency, which is literally the same?
That is a good point. But maturin being, oh, except that when maturin runs, it runs as a compiled program. So there's no reason why the Rust compiler would be any special. Can you try maturin build instead of maturin develop? I guess the exact same issue.
Unfortunately. thing I could try, I'm not sure this would work, is to add it as a propagated build input, which I think, I'm not sure exactly what it does, but it's supposed to propagate this to dependencies. I thought this only works for Nix, but maybe this helps. Nope, never mind. So this is really puzzling, right? Because I guess the trick, the problem here is that we are somehow not getting the NASM binary into the virtual environment. Is there a way I can enter the virtual environment? Just like pretend I'm there? Develop new.
Okay, so that is actually weird because maturin develop is supposed to use the current Python virtual environment.
Oh.
What if you... So the Python virtual environment in question is, I assume, created by your Nix file, right?
Yes.
In like the little recipe at some point it creates. Is it the last step before running maturin? As in, what happens if you install NASM after enabling that virtual environment? Or does the order matter, is my question. Whichever you were doing first, what if you do it second?
I don't think it should matter, because I think the virtual environment is a Python thing, it's not a Nix thing. So the fact that NASM is available is something that I have available in this virtual environment. So if I deactivate the virtual environment, I still have NASM. And for source,
Oh, right.
then I
So
still
it's
have
like
NASM.
there's the Nix environment, and then there's the
Exactly.
Python virtual environment.
Yeah.
So NASM should be available with a way inside or outside of it.
But you can see here, okay, now there's no, okay, this is pretty messy. Now there's no highlighting here, right? But you can see what Nix basically does is it creates this path thing, which has all these massive lists of binaries, right? And one of them then is NASM.
Got it.
So it's
The-
yeah. So this only breaks if someone changes the path virtual environment, right? Then we're in trouble.
Okay, let's try something unsubtle. Let me see if I can find the text box here.
Because I could also just run this in Docker and then move on and debug this later.
Okay, so just before you do that,
Oh,
I
yeah.
just pasted in the chat command. The configure script in question has rules to decide where NASM is. Oh yeah, probably missed a semicolon in between.
This seems to not break immediately, at least.
Okay, so I'd wager
What
that
is
for some reason,
Sorry, go ahead.
so AS is the environment variable that the configure script checks. If AS exists, then it assumes that NASM is invoked by whatever it gave to AS. And if it doesn't exist, then they have a bunch of rules depending on your operating system. So heuristics really say, well, if your operating system looks like this, then chances are that your NASM is going to have that path and it's going to have that name and so on. So basically, rather than trusting their users to make the executable available, they just wrote custom rules for the different operating systems. Oh, okay. So that's the other thing that is required. You also need libclang, uh, which may or may not exist. It may. Oh, easy. Yep.
I mean, Nix by now, by the way, Nix packages is the biggest package repository. It's over 100,000 packages. Um,
Wow. That's actually pretty impressive.
but that means like, uh, oh,
Uh, so
that's neat.
if we decide that we do not like the configure, oh, so you can actually do that. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, because then essentially what I'm hearing you say is that every time I run this, I just need to set this environment variable, right? And then that will be work for.
I think so.
So maturin,
Ah,
um,
it worked.
it did actually. Well, yeah, now the environment is created. We haven't tried to. I think this will fail because yeah, we haven't set it yet. Let me just
Right.
get out and then says this maturing need. So now when I trigger this development again, we should have environment variable saying AS. Right, so we say maturin build.
Nice.
This will work, or at least it will hopefully work. And now we have clang, so that should also be nice. But the entire point here, right, is that this is reproducible. So now once I've wrote this script once, I can just reuse it
Very, very cool.
in all eternity.
So yeah, what I had to do, if you go to build.rs, if you want to see a bit more Windows related ugliness.
I
Uh,
always want to see more Windows-related ugliness.
so unfortunately, for some reason, the configure script picks the wrong Windows compiler. We really want to use the standard Windows compiler to make sure that the build executable plays nicely with Rust.
Mm,
So we want like standard everything. And for that, you want CL, which is Microsoft's command line compiler.
okay.
Uh, so fortunately, on other systems, it picks the right one. So it will pick GCC and so on. So we could also feasibly add a rule here that says if you're on Linux, inject this particular, because in a sense, build.rs is sort of like Nix for Rust projects, right? It is a formula for all the custom steps that you want to run before you actually do the Rust build.
Mm.
And for a pure Rust project, there's no build.rs. It's really needed only when you are doing ugly things like filing another language and so on. So you can also use this file to inject those variables if for some reason that is actually easier. This is actually what tripped me and took forever because the GitHub runners are messy. They have already a million different things installed. So I had to inject things in a very particular order for it to work.
I see. I mean, I do think this may be more Nix related, right? I mean, you didn't have to do this, right?
No, but I only I've never built it on Linux before, except
Mm.
in
Yeah.
the GitHub runners. And on the GitHub runners, I get to be as messy as I want because you can just install whatever you want on the runner. It just disappears as soon as you're done.
I mean, I think
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so another thing we could do if we really want to do it right is say, well, that's actually a configure script issue. For some reason, its heuristics for picking NASM are not correct.
But then we
So
start modifying code, which is upstream.
also yeah. So what I mean is that what we would want to do is then go to the hex64 source and make a pull request there to say, hey, by the way, this poses a problem when you're building on Nix. And
That's
once that's done, then we import it in ours. But that is quite a lot of work.
that would be really really nice. I think yeah, that's a bit of work. Um, that would be nice. We should do that in the source of open source, which
Yeah,
obviously we're gonna do. But I guess for
of course.
now, here, um, we got it working with the export as an SM. I guess let's maybe, I suggest maybe leave it here for now, just for Nix, and then if you run into other problems, we can maybe write about it in the docs.
Okay.
But we're still not done yet because libclang can't be found. Failed to build a native library through cargo.
Wait, did it work before?
No, I think no. Before we just got into the virtual environment, we didn't build the actual thing. And there is something about the libclang here. It can't find. But that's very strange. Hmm. Ah, of course it wouldn't be in the path. Right.
Or do we have the same issue?
I That's a good question. Should I, can you add libraries here?
No, it's only for NASM. So,
Ah, okay.
um, and I think that Clang is actually used somewhere else in the process. I think that has to do with it's not in the configure parts. Actually, it should be in the configure parts. Let me see. There might be a way to use essentially the same trick. Going to be in. This is actually incredibly useful because we can add that not only to Next, but also as steps, 3 steps. So if you are a local developer, if you're planning to contribute to the library, you have to do a little bit of extra work to compile everything locally.
Yeah. That's, or just use NixOS once we get this script done.
Yeah,
I'm
that
kidding.
works too.
No, but
Uh,
I mean,
I mean,
essentially, the Nix script kind of codifies this, right? Because we get all the pain resolved here. It's just a matter of getting it done, because clearly now it doesn't work.
yeah, I mean, this is a good illustration of the added burden of having a own version of this stuff rather than using someone else's library. But I really couldn't find anything that was suitable. So yeah, there's like a million different rules to assign AS the variable if it doesn't exist. Oh, I see. So in quite a lot of cases, it actually assigns. Wait, are you running a NUM chip or is it an X86? It is an Intel CPU, right?
It's an AMD CPU, but it's x86.
Okay, so it should. Oh, I wonder actually. So, what's your so okay, so if you open the configure script
Mm-hmm.
and scroll down to line 583,
Can I do this?
uh,
583.
you can search for host underscore CPU. Yeah. So this is the line that is going to decide what rule to apply to pick NASM.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually wonder what you get when you run host. And I think that this is bash for split at the first minus sign and remove the rest or something like that. Huh.
But then it's
So
like it's a command which is from here. Configs. Oh my god.
so it is
Because it's a
loading,
command, right?
right? So there's a good chance that somehow your machine is given something else, and it either assumes that it's not an architecture on which it's going to need AS, or it gives it a different value.
Config.guess. I mean, what is this? How does where
Okay,
does it
and
find these
then
values from? Where is host defined?
uh, I don't know.
Opt.arg. Okay, yeah. I could
So
just
the only good news with all this is that the version of Faery that you build locally will probably be better than the wheels that you download, because the wheels are built by a machine, and really on Linux, a virtual machine that by design have the smallest possible subset that was deemed to be common enough to essentially be universal. So out of all the potential hardware acceleration features and whatnot, it will pick sort of the common denominator. Whereas if you build it on your local machine, you
yeah, it
might
should
get
be.
better video encoding. Um, Still, that doesn't tell us what's going on with Clang. On the GitHub runners, all I had to do is install libclang, and somehow that fixed the problem. However, I don't know which part of the build process actually uses Clang.
Okay, this worked. So
It
I
did?
see your point, but it will tell me
What
that
did
it's
you
an
do?
x86-64. I mean,
Oh,
just unroll this command, right? Because basically the
oh,
way it
got it.
finds the host is that it uses this config guess file, whatever that is, as an input to the config.sub. And that gives you this string, and you can see that it recognizes Linux GNU. And then I guess the CPU is just going to be the first string here, like you said, it splits on the minus.
Mhm.
Um,
What about Bash? Which Bash? Because as you can see in that file, there's all sorts of nasty.
oh no. Uh,
Okay, that should be absolutely fine.
anyway.
Okay, so I am at I don't know what's going on.
Let's do the Docker approach.
Okay.
And what that means is that I'll just go here and then simply kill this virtual environment.
Uh,
Ah,
yeah.
then I have to
Can I
update
run
everything.
Nix easily inside Docker, or would it be better to use a virtual machine if I
You
wanted to try and replicate the problem?
you can. You just use a Nix image. Actually, there are very nice images for this.
Okay.
So yeah,
Now,
don't know exactly what.
I do want to give it a go because I do like the approach, and uh, that's also something that I'd love to learn. So this may actually be a good excuse to fiddle with Nix.
Right. But then I have to install a lot of dependencies. Luckily, I have them listed here. rustc, of course. Should be it. Oh. Okay. This will take a while. We should have used your machine.
Sorry, I did not foresee this particular issue.
But that's why we're doing this. This is actually really, really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, even though it's painful, like I think once we get this set up, this is reproducible forever, and I can't wait that.
I think so. Yeah, that's my hope at least, that this is kind of a high investment, but once you get it right, you're good to go. And if something starts breaking, then you can easily roll back to a point where it was working and figure
Right.
out exactly what changed. Because
That's exactly it. And while we wait, I can do another small plug, because this what I'm basically doing here is called a flake. Like it's snowflake, because Nix is kind of all things snow and ice. But what's really nice about this is on a GitHub repository, right? So that means this is standalone, reproducible executor for the package. So that means I did this for A stream. I can just say git run, and because it's on GitHub, I can just write the path to the A
oh,
stream,
I see.
and then
That's
this
very
will
nice.
just standalone download it and compile it. Now, because I compile already, it's
Got it.
cached, but then it just runs, so I don't have to install anything, right? I think that's a
That is very cool.
it's a pretty nice
Yeah,
feature. I like that.
that's great.
So we can do
That
the
is
same
very
thing for
nice.
Faery once this is done, and you have Nix.
Yeah.
That's a small thing. You need to address the 0.0001% of the population of the planet that uses NixOS.
Yeah. So I guess the caveat here is that if you run the exact same script on another machine, as in same operating system, but a different architecture, you will trigger a different part of the tree, of the build tree in H264, because you are going to trigger different rules
Yeah,
and so on.
yeah, yeah.
So you may get a different result, but at least it's reproducible on machine with the same hardware. And
Yeah.
fighting with
It's better
hardware
than
is
nothing, right?
perhaps it's the most neomorphic thing you can do.
Let me just install maturin here and then make sure that I can do the maturin build, because that should be the first litmus test.
Mhm. So one thing worth mentioning is that when you run, like, it depends on what pip build does, but by default, maturin develop, for instance, which gives you a nice editable local version, builds the whole Rust part in debug mode, not release. This is typically 100 times slower.
Oh, what?
I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why is it taking 100 seconds to process a second of data? Something's wrong. So if you're using maturin develop, it's usually a good idea to add -- release, which essentially tells maturin to build the whole Rust parts in release mode. It's very similar to C++ in this regard. C++ debug and C++ release are just completely different in terms of
Yeah,
runtime
that is
performance.
true. That's true.
Um,
That's true. What's the default
okay.
behavior? Then that's default building and develop.
Oh, so if you do like pip build or something like that, or pip setup, usually does the release version. It's only if you do maturin build or maturin develop that you'll get. Actually, I'm not even sure about maturin build. Maturin build might do it in release. Okay, what's going on now? Oh, I did not like make clean. I can't see the rest of the message because there's my face in front of it.
Oh. But your face is a very important part of the stream. It says no such file or directory. That's very weird.
Mm. Do you have the make command in your current virtual environment?
Thank you. What's it called in Ubuntu? Is it just
Build
make? Build
build
tools.
underscore essential. Yep. Is it a dash? No, I think it's an underscore. Maybe a dash between the two. There we go.
I mean, all these package managers, it's really, it's like, and everyone had their own idioms, and
I know.
yeah. Have you ever ran Arch Linux?
No, I haven't had that pleasure yet.
You say pleasure. Yeah, me neither. I think I have a few friends from university who did it, but they seem to spend a lot of time doing it as well.
Yeah. Well, which can be, pleasant in and of itself, but yeah, I'm very good at breaking Linux. So usually I try to stick to something
Yeah,
simple.
me too, me too. But then I met Nix. Actually, it's a kind of a weird guilty pleasure to sit and play with it because now it feels fun, because if anything goes wrong, I just go back a version. Like I'm not afraid of breaking it.
It is
Um,
pretty neat.
but
Uh,
that's really been my fear. Imagine if you change your configuration and you break your system. Ugh.
so that's where macOS has a completely different philosophy, which is that you, as an individual, are not smart or responsible enough to mess with your system. So the whole system, actually, even with super user rights, you're not allowed to edit your whole system or all the system files.
Wait, so even if you wanted to, you,
So if you
it will
really
stop you.
want to, yeah. So if you really want to, say, delete a file in your system, I'm not talking about like the regular user files, right? But I'm talking like anything in slash user bin or something like that. There's one way, but it's kind of complicated. You have to reboot in recovery mode, which actually boots onto a different partition. And on that partition, you can then edit from the terminal part of your system and then go back to
Oh my
your
god.
original system.
Yeah, that's really like
So
a
the
walled garden, right? They've protected you
very much
against
so.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So the good news is that you're also protected against quite a lot of viruses
Mm.
because they cannot modify your system, even if you do something like, say, sudo pip install some random library. That library isn't going to have the right to modify your system either. Um,
That's nice.
so yeah, of course, Apple doesn't do it just for that. It does it because it wants to make sure that you can only run the operating system on their machines. So it's
I
not for the
wouldn't.
good of the user; it's
Yeah,
for the
I'm
good of
I'm
the
happy you
company.
said that.
But
Yeah, that really is the problem with
uh,
Apple, right?
yeah, so the reason I'm pointing that out is because I read yesterday actually that KDE, which is kind of the Windows-like
It's like a window
interface.
manager, right?
Yeah, pretty much. But it also kind of like Ubuntu, it's also sort of the face of a particular family of Linux distributions. So as a result, it's both a window manager, but it's also de facto the name of entire operating systems. Uh, and recently, they announced that they were starting to build something similar to Apple. So it's going to be like a
Oh,
very robust, immutable system which is supposed to simplify rollbacks and so on. So you have your own partition for your files, but the operating system lives on its own partition, and there's no touching any of those files. It's only like major upgrades
that
where
makes
the
sense.
installer, but yeah. We'll see. That might actually prove to be quite useful for quite a lot of users that like, I don't want to install bleeding edge libraries to change my network manager. I'm perfectly happy with my Wi-Fi network as it is, and I just want to,
Yeah,
make
there are
sure that it's
definitely
still going to work
lots.
tomorrow.
I think there's a huge market for that, right? Even just stealing like fraction of the Apple people, I think will
Yeah.
be
And Windows more and more. Like I've got a few colleagues that are
yes.
Windows diehards, and with the last features, like the whole AI stuff, some of them are like, hey, how do I switch to Linux because I don't want Microsoft to record my screen at all times.
I mean, Apple is doing that, right?
They are. I hope not.
I don't know. I don't know.
They
Maybe
might.
one way to get around that conversation is to look at this error now. Have you seen this before? Um, could not compile Python lib due to errors, so like a lot of unused, unstable library features. Is that because I'm a too recent version of Rust or something?
Yes, that is most likely the case. Is it? Did you use a particular Docker machine?
The latest Ubuntu.
Oh, and it comes with Rust.
No, I installed Rust.
You did
Yeah,
with Rust up.
yeah, apt-get 1.75
Okay, so
from
that shouldn't be an issue.
December 23.
And just to double check, if you open cargo.toml and scroll all the way to the top, yeah, the edition says 2021. What is going on?
Use of unstable library feature. Is it too old, maybe? Is that it? Should we... It could also be that it
Oh,
thinks
wait,
that...
so
No, but if you use the same... If this works, why does this run on your machine? And it ran on my machine before. I mean, this is the same decoder.
so my Rust version is actually 1.82, not
Uh,
1.75. And
let me try to
the
upgrade.
I used a feature that I think was added in 180.
That's another thing that's good to document. Maybe you should start a documentation process while I'm at it. Oops. Oh, what? Uh, we talked about Rust C. What else was there? I guess that's actually it. Oh. Why did cargo deinstall?
Oh, that's what, okay. So instead of apt install cargo, you need to use Rust up. So Ubuntu ships an outdated version of Rust.
How do you do this?
And here's the link. This is actually something that I think Rust does quite well. It's just a page where you just copy paste this thing, and that's it. It just installs the latest version.
Hit me
Oh,
with
you do
this
need to install Java.
random shell script and run it on my machine
Yeah,
unconditionally.
this is great.
We love that. Speaking of security.
Just yeah, because package managers are always somewhat outdated.
Not Nix. Oh god, I sound like a broken
Except
record.
Nix.
Alexandre, stop me, stop
No,
me.
no, you are absolutely right. Look, Rust Up fixes an issue that does not need to be fixed if you have a proper package manager. But likewise, if anyone had apt install ffmpeg or proper way of doing that, we wouldn't need to have any of this.
That is actually true.
So really, we are fixing problems from the Windows ecosystem. But realistically, I think that those are important users.
Because I find like there's so many. It's simple to say, but I think it's very difficult to do, right? I think there are a lot of devils in the details. And I think that's also why there are so
Right.
many different package managers, right? I mean, many of them are very, very good.
Yeah.
So I guess now you want to
So
source
to me,
this.
yeah, one
Did it
thing
just
that,
install it in my home? Oh my god.
oh yeah, it
Wait.
will want you to add something to. But since you're just doing it once, you may not need to.
So we're running on the following command. Okay, yeah, I can just run cargo bin. No, env, right? What? Um, there's no env file here.
Really?
But I guess what it wants is to.
Oh no, I know. So there's probably an end file, but it probably doesn't have the ch mode plus x. So because it's not executable, so if you run ls.cargo, I think that it's going to show it.
Bam.
Um, Try source followed by the name of the file. Yeah.
Of course. But this is the problem, right? I mean, a lot of these. I mean, a lot of these processes are implicit, right? It's like you need to know everything about the system before it works. I'm just saying that I really sympathize with newcomers here, right? Like, imagine you meet these errors in the beginning, right? What are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna read through all the
It's
documentation
horrible.
in Bash and realize what's the difference between like an environment file and a shell script executable? Like, it's just, whew.
Yeah.
No, you know what they should do? They should watch our videos to see that, we struggle and we find solutions. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Um, so there is one good practice that I guess NixOS, that some companies do, that NixOS makes absolutely useless, which is good. Uh, where to make sure that it's easy to onboard new people at any point in the project, you pick a dev in your team at random every week, and they have to delete the project from their computer.
Oh God. Oh God.
So
Honestly, I think
if
it
the
makes sense.
yeah, so yeah, if the
I had a
installation process is brutal,
then
well, then you quickly fix it.
I had a previous supervisor who told me if it hurts, do it often. I think it's the same philosophy, right? Because if there's something that's cumbersome to do, you should expose yourself to it to such a degree that you're incentivized to simplify it.
That is a fair point. That
But
said, I'm probably in the other extreme where uh, I will happily spend 3 days writing a script that lets me not do something that I find repetitive, even if that doing that thing would have taken 5 minutes.
I totally resonate with that, and it's so dumb. But let me back to this elegance thing, right? There's something beautiful to having a simple setup. I love that. I think that's also why I'm spending so much time with Nix, because just it's a peace of
Yeah,
mind thing, right? Just knowing that there is this script, and if everything fails, I can just go back to that script and then know it will work.
and
Like
I
having a
think
safe
that's
haven.
key. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it worked.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So now I can install the Python package. Good. Let me do NumPy, and then this should really work. Okay, so color maps, this is done, I think. I don't know why it asked me to do the merge editor, because I think we've removed all merge problems. Are there any other merge? I think that's it actually.
If you run git status, it should tell you, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Just gonna do that in another terminal too. Yeah, both modified color maps because inline has now been taken out of the picture. I guess I can add flake.nix and add Python Faery CLI color maps. But I do think before we push anything, I'd love to see that everything compiles and runs, because then we have an API. And what's really cool is that if this works, I can literally take a one of the recorded files in the test folder and create
Mm-hmm.
an MP4 video out of it.
Yep.
In principle. Well, will it work? Because this is going to be a normal event stream.
So in principle, you should be able to run any of the examples.
Yeah, but in the what I mean is that if I just take the input and then output, like so that I would write
Oh, I see what you mean. Right.
something like
Oh, yeah, that I don't know. I haven't tested that. So I'm curious to see if the color maps generation works on your machine as well. I don't see why it wouldn't, but
it did. I tested that before.
oh, it did. Okay, oh, that's good.
Well, but we should test it now that we changed the CLI again. Ha! It worked. Fantastic. So you see, if I do color maps, as you may pointed out,
Oh,
I need
excellent.
to provide an output, so it has to be less as
Oh,
called
that's
PNG.
actually
You see.
that's great.
Then it says x.png, which I can open. Voila.
Oh, lovely. Excellent.
So beautiful, beautiful thing. But okay, let's just test. So now I can take an input file, which is then from tests data. What's good? Generic. I think that's fairly large, right?
Oh, so generic is the you want to use dvs.es. Generic is only supported if you use the lower level API because it's not an actual event type. Wait, did that just work?
Yeah, that totally
That's
worked.
cool. Oh, right, because you didn't give it any output, so it assumes that you wanted the default, which is CSV output straight into the. That
Exactly.
is great.
So,
It's
but now the
amazing.
output doesn't have the MP4 encoded yet. So maybe we can add that just for the kicks of it.
All
Right?
right.
Because
So this one
here,
is a bit special because MP4 isn't standard in the sense that it requires a more complex pipeline. I haven't implemented yet the sort of bundle of filters that is required to go from events to files, sorry, to frames and then video.
yeah, because we can't just
Um,
send any stream in there, right?
yeah. So basically, if you do input, say, .dvs or .es or ADAT and output.mp4 at the moment, since the implicit stream that reaches the output is an event stream, is going to try to use the event stream export function, which happens to only support event formats. So to force it to generate a video, you would first need to use one of the functions that converts events into frames and then save that.
Yeah. And we could do a match, right, in the CLI, but that's also going to be a bit tricky. I mean, for this to
Um,
work, we kind of need the filters, essentially, right?
yes, they are mandatory. And so there's a first layer, which is the filters. And at the moment, you would need to combine several of them to go from frames to video. Or, as we discussed last time, we could also add either just in the CLI or also in the API a special meta filter,
Yeah.
which you invoke, you just say render, but really under the hood, render is
It's
running several
several.
sub
Yeah.
filters. Uh, yes, in principle, that would work.
I like that, but I do think it's maybe outside of the scope of this what we've done right now. But I mean, honestly, like, so
Yeah, yeah, that's okay.
we can still say,
Um, can you try one of the examples that generates a video just to confirm that that works?
yeah, let me just
Have
generate like this. So now actually you can see this totally works. Now we can, um, I just, I just
oh,
love how
right.
this is modular. You know, it's like it's
Oh,
beautiful.
that's
So now we just
great.
generated an A.4 file from an ES file. But then you're asking, can we run some of the examples? So we could take, for instance, the events to video.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wonder if this works actually. Oops. And then where does it put it? Data generated.
Uh, yeah, I just cram everything in data generated because all the tests do create all sorts of files as well. There's all sorts of crap in there.
Perfect.
It worked. That's
This is
cool.
actually pretty cool. Amazing.
I quite like this color map for some reason. I don't know. It's got nice sunset colors.
It's almost like dystopian of some sort. Like I get Blade Runner vibes for some reason. This is amazing.
Uh,
I
can
mean,
you
I'm
try
very happy. Yeah, go ahead.
events to slow motion video? Oh, sorry,
Events to
events to
video,
video slow
slow
motion.
motion.
Yeah. So reason is that that one is a little longer. The output is actually 10 seconds. And since I upscale the original video, this is roughly to get a sense of how long it takes to generate a. Oh, did you do? Oh, so it could be that we are not running in release mode because this is quite slow. Oh, there we go. Because this is like 10 seconds of video with MP4 impression. It generates a slow motion
Oh,
video.
this is nice.
So that's more frames, right? We're looking at 600 frames here.
Yeah.
So I just want to get a sense of, are we anywhere close to real time? I'd say maybe not. That was probably 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, for sure. But it could
Um,
be the
and
release mode thing. Is
yeah,
there ways to
and
test for that?
also I've been, oh, good question. Not sure.
Hmm. Anyway, I like
Uh,
the stamp here.
yeah, and there's a little Faery logo at the bottom left, which is really not mandatory. I just
Ah,
wanted to
beautiful. I like it.
showcase kind of how you would add your own logo to do some branding on your videos or make sure that people can't just sell them, put them in their presentations without uh, saying, hey, by the way, they were recorded by that person or something. So
Oh, this is fantastic. I mean, honestly, this is. I've been waiting for this. We're kind of merging the best of both worlds. We still need event camera
so the
support,
reason,
but man,
yeah,
this is
absolutely.
amazing.
So the reason why I'm not terribly concerned with video not necessarily being real time, I just want it to be reasonably fast,
Hmm.
is that I can't really think of a reasonable scenario where you would need to generate the video at runtime. There are cases where you would want to do video streaming, but you're typically not compressing, or at least not with Faery. I think that video compression in Faery is just sort of the built-in thing when you're doing post-processing. Um,
Yeah,
for
for
any
sure.
serious streaming use cases, you would want to use something more powerful than Faery to do the video compression part.
Yeah,
Say GStreamer, for instance, and hardware acceleration and all that. So Faery is kind of a minimal. It's meant to be an easy to use video generator, not
exactly.
sort of a complete and powerful one. So
But I think you will find that
um,
ease of use trumps a lot. I think people can
I
we can suffer a
yes,
lot of performance just if it's easy to
100%.
do. And I think what I also like about this very much is that there's so many paths for optimization. There's so many things we can do if you want to have it, you know, have it work better, right? Essentially.
Well, there's just one other feature I wanted to sort of boast about because I'm pretty happy with it.
Ooh, nice.
Having done my PhD, or some of it at least, in study of color, kind of find it important. So this is why the color maps all have like a colorblind version, to make sure that if you pick a color map, you're aware of the implications for something that does concern like 10% of the population. So it's pretty important for making sure that everyone can see what you're doing. So now what's
That's
clever, I think,
amazing. I didn't know it was 10% of
is
the
that
population. That's a lot.
it's actually less if you take fully colorblind people, but there's quite some people that are partially colorblind.
Hmm.
So it's like a lack of cones of a certain type, which means that you can still tell colors apart. It's just harder.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Um, so what I quite like in the implementation that we have in Faery is that this is actually done by converting color maps, which means that you could, if you go back to the example, um, the slow motion video, for instance,
Hmm.
which is, sorry, not the video itself, the script
Ah, the script.
that
Nice.
generated
Yeah.
it.
Here.
Um, so as you can see, we're using color maps dot uh, Manago, I think, or something like that.
Hmm.
Managa, sorry. Uh, oh, my face is in front of it again.
Oh, ah,
Sorry.
sorry. It's hard for me to tell.
Yeah. Um, so right now it's called with the dot flipped method, which just reverses the color map. But you can also call, I think that's called colorblind or something like that, or to colorblind. What did I call that function?
so many color maps here. It's crazy. From base import color map.
Colorblindness underscore simulation.
Wow, this is very, very, very cool. Okay, this is like a feature I had no idea.
And it's very specific, right? But so and then you would want protanopia, for instance.
Color map simulation, and then, but then I need the
But you can just
fairy.
use a string.
Oh,
You don't have to, but
which is protonopia. I also That's another word I think I did not know before, but that's good. Okay.
uh, and then if you run that, it will use the sort of simulated color deficiency and use that as the color map. So the video is going to be what a colorblind person would see if you were to send them the original video. So if you use your own color maps, um, and if the subtle differences between on and off events are important, for instance. So it's not happy with.
No, it's
Oh,
not called colorblind simulation, called colorblindness simulation. It's my,
oh
I
yes.
mistyped it.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, but
Um,
it does take a
yeah,
bit of time. So we'll have to.
if you're say adding a video to a paper, for instance, and you want to make sure that uh, differences in the video are clearly represented and are accessible, running it with that means that you can check that the output is colorblind friendly.
This is, by the way, something that we really need to document to tell people that this exists.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, yeah. But yeah, I think that composes it shows, the benefits of
it's so cool.
some of those features kind of for free. Like I didn't have all that much work to add to have that.
But I mean, this would never happen for. Oh, nice. This would never
Okay,
happen
so
in
this one is like
individual libraries, right? This is the power of working together. I'm really impressed with this.
Tiger.
It's so nice.
So it's of course it's not perfect in that like the perception of color is its own topic. So what it really does is if you use, for instance, a color map that has red and green,
Hmm.
uh, they will look very similar to someone who only has one type of cone. or two types of cones instead of three. And it's important to know, because if you don't know, then you're making your figure or video hard to
Hard to
understand for
see
like
exactly.
set of relations. So,
This is so cool. Okay.
because yeah. Anyway, sorry for
Nope.
the
What? This is so
distraction.
cool. This
I
is
was just
so
very
cool.
happy with that little feature.
I mean, yeah, I'm really impressed. Actually, it's really a joy to work with you because like we talk about something and like, yeah, let's get it done, and then you always come up with this treasure trove of additional features. Like, hey, look, I did this color map, or hey, look, by the way, I did all this MP4 stuff by myself. It's amazing. It's really powerful.
I really enjoy working with you as well.
Oh. I wasn't fishing for compliments, just to be clear,
But
but
still,
it's nice to know. Um,
it is true
and
nonetheless.
we have fruits of our labor now. We can literally take this and we can put it up. Um, oh, more conflicts. Let me just get this sorted. CLI init. Oh, it's the same. I added a nope, sorry. I added a link to the library interface documentation just to explain why we're doing these redundant statements. I
Good.
thought
Yeah.
you'd find that okay.
Absolutely. I'm not happy with it either, but that seems to be the accepted solution. So
Yeah, I mean, these are all, this again makes a lot of sense. Another thing I wouldn't have thought about. Okay, we're there.
cool.
Uh-oh. What? Oh. Ah, I'm an idiot.
Oh, I think that you
Um,
need to push force after a rebase.
exactly. Because here we have the yeah, we are on top of your MP4 pull request, right? So this is exactly what we need. So I'm just gonna truncate whatever is in CLI, which means we can go back here. Okay, and I guess now we should wait for things to the checks to compile. But then actually we have everything we're ready. I guess maybe one thing we can do is to prepare a release, right? So
Yes.
here I can
So
check out main.
since the release is going to uh, recompile everything as well, and we probably want to include your recent changes to the release, we could just merge immediately, go
Mhm.
back to a single pushing on main, which is absolutely fine at this stage of the project at very least. Uh, and once we're
But yeah, so sorry, can you repeat
so,
that? I mean, like,
so basically, I would merge this without waiting for the thing to finish
okay,
because
yeah,
it's going to take 30 minutes.
seriously?
Uh,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
let's do that.
and we're building like if you take the cross section of all the Python versions and operating system versions, we're building the library 40 times or something like that. Um,
That okay, fair. I'm fine with that, and I think we saw that it worked at least on my machine.
well, yeah,
But
let's just merge it, and we can always add more comments on main,
and
which we will need to do anyway.
you do a rebase and merge here, right?
Uh,
So you would take
it's
these
just
commits. Hmm?
it just says merge on my machine on my version of GitHub. I don't have the rebase.
Oh.
Oh,
I
I see what
think
you mean. So I have a different interface for some reason. So I'm on the same pull request. It's showing the same like loading menu and everything, but the button says merge pull request. That's it.
ha easy.
Um, oh, so I've selected the first item actually of the three.
The first item.
and then I just click merge. I mean, since you just rebased, it's actually probably equivalent.
I think so. Bam.
Cool. Okay. So now that it's done, I can actually walk you through doing a release.
Yeah, because so okay, if you don't mind me just
Yeah.
saying what I think should happen, and you can correct
Mhm.
me. My understanding is that there are two version numbers we have to change. One is in cargo TOML. No.
Oh, so I actually fixed that. I forgot to tell you. I removed the
Oh.
version in cargo. So cargo, which is why it says 000 somewhere in the compilation. That doesn't matter. So we're down to just one number, which is a bit cleaner.
So you managed to fit it into PyProject, or?
Yeah, that's the only number that we need to change, I think.
That's amazing. So how does it work in cargo? Like, do you pick up the commit from Git,
Um,
or?
so it actually boils down to maturin. So in theory, you shouldn't have PyProject and cargo.toml, right? It's kind of weird to have this duality because
Yeah.
they play the same role. Um, but because maturin is really there to pretend that it's compiling a Rust thing, but then it crams everything into a Python package, you don't actually need a version in your
Ah,
cargo.toml. That is only required if you're using cargo as a
I
full-fledged
see.
sort of
Hello.
package
That's
management
amazing.
thing.
Hey
Hello.
there, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, so we're just so this is open source hacking hours, right? And I know we wanted to talk a bit about near documentation. We're just wrapping
Yeah.
something up about a release of a software. Do you mind if we finish this and then we can talk in like?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Amazing, cool. Feel free to stick around. Like this is Alexandre.
Yeah.
Meet. I hope I'm saying
Hi.
your name correct. Like Ifat
That's
or
that's actually that
If
is
I,
okay, yeah.
okay.
Um, Yeah, so we've just been hacking on this project called Faery, and we're ready for a new release. And what I'm hearing you saying is that now that the Rust submodule here doesn't need a version number. I'm quite excited about this because that means we can actually remove the version number here. And so one structure I had success with in other projects, and using that in A stream, for instance, is that in here you would then do new releases with tags. And then
Hmm.
PyProject will pick up the tag and use that as a semantic version.
Oh, I see.
Which is really cool because then if you release new versions, the only thing you have to do is to change the tag. And then everything, and with a GitHub action, you can then run all the CI pipelines
Right.
to build all the artifacts.
We'll need to make sure that maturin can do that
But didn't you just say
because
that
it is
maturin
the
doesn't need a version number?
not in the Rust part, but in the it still needs to know the version. So maturin really reads
Mm,
the two files. It
yeah,
reads the PyProject and the cargo thing, and it just sort of orchestrates everything. It builds
I see.
everything.
Yeah, okay.
Um, and
Hmm.
they haven't. So there is this sort of extension to PyProject.toml where you can actually read the version number from a file or an external source. And it is available in setup tools, but not in maturin. In maturin, the version has to be written in plain text in the PyProject.
I see.
Um,
Okay, maybe it's not something we have to do now. I think it's worthwhile looking into, but that was simplified a
yeah.
little bit. Let's look at that later. But I guess now we've bumped the version number. That means I need to
Yeah.
commit this, right?
Hmm.
So let me augment this. So that means the pi party is now here. Oops. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh. So I'm gonna push that to main, right?
That's
Wait,
good.
wait. I'm still on the CLI branch because I'm an idiot. Would be over. Please move or remove them before switching branches. So the problem is now that this file has been removed, right? So it's not aware of it. So what I can do is I can add this, stash it, and then check out main. And then I can pull, and then I can just... Good. So now we have updated to 0.3. So I can push this to main. Sorry, origin. Bam.
Nice. Okay, so the next step is to go to release in the right, releases. Click on that. In the top right, draft a new release. Then you first need to create a new tag for the release.
Okay, so you
So
also
that's
need to do
this
that.
kind of manual.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Usually I call it by the same name as the tag, but we could get fancy and add a bit more substance to it. And then in principle, you just hit publish release.
You know what's really cool? You can generate release notes, which is really nice. So then you get like...
That's cool.
And you can then get the full change log of all the different changes between those two different
That
things.
is actually great.
Yeah, and then publish.
So one thing that's a little fiddly with this process is if the build crashes,
yes,
or something breaks and so on, you typically need to delete the release, which is pretty easy to do. Since it won't push the wheels unless everything works, it's either not pushed or pushed, so at least we don't have to worry about that. The problem is that I've had the issue before. If you don't remember to also delete the tag, when you build again, after, say, fixing something, it will still try and publish the old tag, which points to the older commit, right? So it's like, oh, I created tag 0.3.0, particular commit, realize that there's an issue, add more commits. But then if you release again, but don't delete the tag first, whenever you release, it will try and release the commit that you tagged as 0.3.0, right?
That's a good point.
So I did lose quite a bit of time with that particular problem. You just need to remember to, if something crashes, delete the tag, delete the release, and then you can rebuild. You
I see,
have to
but
do
I
more
guess
than
the
just
whole
do the
point
release.
of doing this pull requests with release workflows is that we will minimize those crashes, right? Because we tested all the compilation beforehand. And I think so just one comment again on the process of using automated release notes is that this would be the same process. We just wouldn't have to do the commit of bumping the version number, right?
Honestly, if we find a way to do it, I think that'd be great and far less error prone.
I'll test it for... that's amazing. So I guess we just have to wait to see if all the wheels are built.
So if you want to see something frightening, you can go to actions. And due to my suboptimal CI/CD code, we are actually building the whole thing 6 times about 40 builds. So this is going to take 3 hours, give or take.
Are we limited in our CI time? Do you know?
No, I think that we just get throttled down. So if you just push too many of it, GitHub is just going to give you lower priority or something. So a worst case scenario, we'll just wait for tomorrow morning to push the next version. But yeah, that's definitely something we could try and optimize. But it also, are we really going to release every 12 hours?
No. But I'm loving this setup because it's automated, right? And we can keep improving things and adding it, making it more robust. So this is amazing.
100%. Great.
Awesome. I think I'll end the stream here and say thank you. This has been amazing. I think we've come a long way, and I think we have a solid first stab at a very useful Faery version. So amazing work.
I really agree. And I'm gonna look around the Nix issues and see if I can wrap my head around how Nix works and see if I can fix this weird issue we ran into.
I would love that. Thanks.